Our gut microbiome, our thyroid, all of these different things shift seasonally in response to UV. There are some really interesting studies showing how light impacts gut microbiome diversity. And so a lot of times people have gut issues, and number one, their circadian rhythms are crap, so that is going to be a huge issue. Your gut lining can't repair, you're not getting the right signaling from the light, you're not getting enough darkness, but also people are not exposing their bellies to any sort of light, and that's a huge issue for your gut microbiome.
I have been learning from today's guest for the last several months, and the health strategies that she shared with me, well, mostly just in her emails, but like also a little bit personally, have revolutionized my experience of living in my body. And listen, I've been around cutting edge health stuff my whole life, but the way she explains the way our bodies work is so powerful, so revolutionary, especially as it relates to light. So I cannot wait for you to enjoy this episode with Sarah Kleiner. It is going to blow your mind. It's going to blow your mitochondria wide open. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Plenty. I'm your host, Kate Northrup, and together we are going on a journey to help you have an incredible relationship with money, time, and energy, and to have abundance on every possible level. Every week, we're going to dive in with experts and insights to help you unlock a life of plenty. Let's go fill our cups.
Please note that the opinions and perspectives of the guests on the Plenty podcast are not necessarily reflective of the opinions and perspectives of Kate Northrup or anyone who works within the Kate Northrup brand.
Welcome, Sarah. Welcome to Plenty.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, I'm so happy to have you. So I don't know how I found you exactly on the wormhole of Instagram, but I did. And I really love how sciencey you are. I love how smart you are. And you come at health from a perspective that, quite frankly, I've never heard other people talking about many of the things that you do, at least certainly not from the angle you do. And the angle you take is quantum.
Yes.
What does quantum wellness mean?
So I like to look at it as something that's really small, like that gives a large effect. So and look at it on the scale of photons. So we talk about light quite a bit, and electrons, which we gather from the earth. We gather when sunlight hits the skin, it excites electrons. And so I like to look at how photons and electrons impact the body and impact our health.
Photons and electrons, which is, certainly not the angle that your GP is taking or your OBGYN when you go in for your annual. If I started talking to them about light, I don't know. But I've been telling all my friends since you and I had our session, I've been telling everybody about charging themselves up in the light. And I didn't really understand what was so important about light and accessing UV rays and getting those light particles on our skin, because we've been so conditioned to believe that the sun is dangerous.
Yeah.
What are we misunderstanding? What are we missing out on by not getting ourselves outside in the light?
Well, first, we have to understand when you actually look at the science around UV light and how dangerous it is, it's being done on these narrow band UV lamps, right? And it's mostly done on animals. And then when you look at the animals, a lot of them are hairless rats, which they are, they are awake at night. So it's a completely unfair comparison. Now, I'm not somebody who's going to say, please go, if you're Fitzpatrick 1 skin type, go lay in the sun for 6 hours and that's fine. No, there's a way to expose yourself to the sun safely and to do it in a way that's health promoting. And then there's a way to be careless about it. So we have to, whenever I start talking about this topic, I always like to make that distinction first off, that yes, you'll get the kind of extreme people are like, there's no studies that say sun causes skin cancer. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not just going to be an idiot, right? Like you want to do this the right way. But when you do look at what light does, in particular UV light, red, near infrared, all of these things, which are together when you are outdoors in sunlight, they're health promoting. There's a lot of health benefits, and they do a lot of crucial things for our metabolism, the immune system, heart health, brain health. I mean, every bit of the body needs to be touched and influenced by light and darkness as well. So we need darkness, and that's a whole other conversation, but it's a part of this as well, because most of us are not getting bright enough light in the day, and then at night we are exposed to light that's too bright when we're needing to be exposed to darkness so that our bodies can make pineal melatonin. So there's so much that our modern world just kind of, number one, there's the fear mongering around UV. I get it, but we need to learn how to do this safely. And then number two, there's just our modern world where we have these artificial LED lights. Biden made the incandescent light bulb illegal, which is very problematic for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons, you can look at all the kind of toxic elements of LEDs and these bulbs, but on a quantum scale, there is no infrared in these bulbs, right? And infrared has amazing amount of health benefits. So we've essentially stripped all the infrared out of our indoor environments completely. And most of our indoor lights are, blue light toxic, which has a lot of negative health implications. So
it's so many things. Biden made incandescent light bulbs illegal.
Mm-hmm. You can't get them now in California. I can still get them in Georgia.
Yeah, because I've definitely
Amazon.
ordered them in Florida, because I am so persnickety about the light quality. And we moved into our apartment. We rent right now, and we moved in, and the lights were like just sort of like the up to code fixtures. I mean, awful. Yeah. And so I'm very particular about the quality of the light, and it's got to be like a little bit yellowy amber and the kind of that golden vibe. And otherwise I just turn all the lights off.
I keep mine off.
I mean, I pretty much have them off, except at night we put a lot of red lights into all of our fixtures.
Very nice.
Okay. High level for someone who's like, what?
Like, what the heck did she just say?
What is happening with our bodies with toxic blue light, and what is happening? A, where does it come from? B, what important health cycles or whatever processes is it interrupting? And C, what kind of detrimental effects does that have on our bodies?
Yeah. So many. I mean, first, let's just start like first thing in the morning, what most people do in the morning, which I used to do until I knew better, till I had my own kind of little health crisis and was like, oh, I'm going to listen to these weird light people because nothing else is working. That's how I got into this. But when we wake up in the morning, most people are going to grab their cell phone and look straight at it. Well, that is about 5,700 Kelvin, right? So Kelvin is a measure of intensity. And that's the same intensity of the sun in the middle of the day in June. So we're sending a signal. There's this thing called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It starts in the retina, goes to the brain, basically telling your brain it's the middle of the day in June. So hurry up and make enough cortisol to meet that demand. And so what people are doing, what they don't know is that blue light, it increases cortisol and increases insulin and increases blood sugar completely in the absence of food. And that is very well documented in the literature. So most of us are already stressed out, right? We've already got a lot, that we wake up to notifications and kids and jobs and all this stuff. And we're bombarding our body out of the gates with this phone, right? Just the light alone, not even talking about what you're doing to these different brain waves that I know you're familiar with. Needing to start the day intentionally, not letting these other things come in, but just the light alone.
Just the light alone.
Is going to bring your cortisol
regardless, even if it's a meditation app.
Yeah, even
the light alone is a problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
So important.
Yeah.
So it's giving us this. So it's because obviously we want a spike of cortisol in the morning, but it's too much.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then it's spiking our blood sugar.
Yep.
It's spiking our insulin.
Yes.
Not optimal. So many stressors, not to mention what you might actually be reading.
Right.
Which is a whole other category. So the light alone. So what is optimal?
Yeah.
You wake up, maybe you have the luxury of waking up without an alarm. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe your body wakes you up naturally. So lovely. Maybe that's not happening, but regardless, then you would do what to set yourself up for like the optimal hormone balance and metabolic experience of your day?
Yeah. So ideally, and this actually happens pretty naturally for people after they've done this for even as little as 3 days. Ideally, you wake up around the time of sunrise and you try not to turn on overhead lights. If you are in an environment you can't, like control it, I always keep a pair of amber blue blockers beside the bed, just pop those on in case there's a light on downstairs. And I just go straight outside, right? Just open the door.
First thing.
Go straight outside because during sunrise, which is when the sun is between 0 and 10 degrees, there's blue light is just starting to come in. And we have an abundance of red and near infrared, which everyone's talking about red light therapy panels now. They're fabulous. I have a few in my house. I have one in my purse, a little battery operated one that I brought on the plane.
You are totally my people.
Isn't just like TSA, what the hell is this, right? So red light therapy, amazing, over 5,000 different studies on how it's beneficial to all parts of the body.
Yeah.
You can get those frequencies in abundance at sunrise time. And blue light is just coming on. And so when blue light enters your eyes, it's a timekeeper. So it's telling your brain, okay, it is, 6:30 a.m. or whatever time sunrise is for you, 7 a.m. Let's start making appropriate hormones for this time of day. Let's kind of restart the TCA cycle, which is your metabolism where you burn sugar, fat, carbs, all of that. It kind of restarts. Several processes in the body come online, and they do it in this kind of gradual, natural way when you're outdoors getting that natural light. And that's sunrise is 0 to 10. And then UVA is that next magic window of time. And that's when the sun is between 10 and 30 in the morning. Okay. We have another bit of magic that comes online. This big protein called POMC is activated in the brain, which is where we make alpha MSH, which helps to regulate the appetite, can even suppress it if needed. We want to eat in the morning though.
Yeah.
But someone who has a lot of appetite issues, I'm like, you've got to get out there, UVA. We've got serotonin is synthesized in that time, and that gets turned into and recycled into that night's melatonin. Okay. So your night of sleep actually begins in UVA, right? Like how well you're sleeping.
Starts in the morning.
Yep. These aromatic amino acids in the eyes capture those photons, right? And then synthesize them into serotonin, dopamine, alpha MSH, all of these amazing neuropeptides and neurohormones, also pregnenolone, right, which becomes all of our other hormones, becomes cortisol, sex hormones, thyroid hormone, all of that happens in UVA window in response to
light. And that's
light.
the 10 to 30 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. And we'll talk about it at the end, but you have an app that tells you how to do all this.
Yeah, it's going to have everything we talk about all in one little hub, so you don't have to download a bunch of stuff and
I'm so excited about
this.
Okay. You mentioned, and I want to back up, you had a health crisis and started to listen to these light people.
Yes.
What happened?
Yes. So I was kind of involved in the carnivore community. Believe it or not, I had started a page in 2019 and I was already doing nutrition, but I started doing some nutritional counseling in that community. Using credentials and then getting more credentials and just, going pure nutrition. I was really bought into it. And that helped me with a lot of things going carnivore. But about that, year or so mark in, you hear this a lot. It's not quite so optimal. But I thought, you know what? I'm doing really good. I'm going to get pregnant. Like I'm ready. Like it was after 2020. I have a daughter who's 16 with pretty profound non-speaking autism. And so we'd always been like, all right, we want to have another baby, but it's just not the right time. It was just never the right time. Yeah. And then all of a sudden one day I woke up and I was like 41 and I was like, it's time, And so I thought, I'm so healthy. I've been doing this carnivore diet. Like I've, really been strict and good for years. This is going to be easy. And I got pregnant right away, but unfortunately I lost that one. And then my doctor's like, it's, it happens all the time. Yeah. Women lose babies and it's fine. Then it happened again. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is like so devastating. Like I never really understood the whole pregnancy loss thing. It's one of those things you can't really understand until you go through it, of like how devastating it
I'm
is.
sure.
And so then we were like, okay, let's just do IVF, because my doctors were like really pressuring me to go down the IVF route. They're like, you're just turning 42. I had just turned 42. I'd been trying for a year, from 41 to 42 unsuccessfully. And they were like, let's just do IVF. That way we can test the embryos and make sure, and I was like, okay, I guess why not, So I did. I went through 2 rounds of IVF that I had no viable embryos. And I was at that point introduced to Dr. Jack Cruz to come onto my podcast. And I was like, I've heard of him before. It was one of my community members has a connection with him. And she's like, you should really interview him. And I was like, this is like, he talks about a lot of weird stuff, and he's, I don't know. But I was just like, fine, okay. It's one of those things you're like, fine, there's a reason that I'm doing this. And so I talked with Jack, and I just kind of told him what was going on. And he's like, you need to learn about leptin, and you need to learn about light, and you need to do these things, and you'll get pregnant. And I was like, and deuterium as well, which is another thing. He's like, leptin, light, and deuterium, those are your keys, and you're going to get pregnant. And I was like, all right, fine. Like, if that's what I got to do to have the baby, then that's what I'm going to do. And I did. And I was just and I dove head in. Of course, I had to learn more about it, get more certifications and all that good stuff. And lo and behold, that was I think I talked to him in September. And then I was positive pregnancy test that following January and had my son at age 43. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. So we've touched on light.
Yes.
Talk to me about leptin.
Yes. So leptin was discovered in 1994, and Cruz has done a lot of great work around it. It's kind of complicated. If you read his blogs, they're a little hard to understand.
Okay.
So I had to do a lot of deciphering and then tailoring more to the female body.
Yes.
But it is a master circadian signaling hormone, and it was discovered in 1994. It impacts your thyroid. I mean, there's extensive literature on leptin in the thyroid, sex hormones, from everything from infertility to hot flashes to endometriosis to, you name it. Leptin is correlated with, and being leptin sensitive, having healthy leptin levels are correlated with all of those. Immune system, we have leptin receptors in the heart, all over the body. And so that was crucial for me. And I tested my leptin and ended up being really low at that point.
Okay, you were really low.
I was very low.
I have been struggling with low leptin.
Yep.
Which is why I reached out to you.
Yep.
What does it mean if your leptin levels are high? What does it mean if they're low? And what's optimal?
Yeah. So I like for women between a 7 and a 10. I know that's kind of a tight range,
Okay.
but that's the range I like to see for women. Now, if you're like really lean and you're healthy and you're not symptomatic and your hormones are good, sometimes you can go a little bit below that range, and it's not a huge deal. I am seeing more and more women, though, that their leptin's like 30, 40, 50. I have a lady that's in my group now whose leptin was 90. I'm seeing these like really, really high.
Wow.
Yeah. Very high leptin levels. And leptin resistance happens before insulin resistance. It's a precursor.
Okay.
So someone might just kind of be feeling like not so optimal. They're not even necessarily pre-diabetic yet, but they're getting there, right? Like metabolic health, it starts, and you're going to continue for it to go towards eventually some sort of metabolic dysfunction. And so leptin resistance is kind of a precursor to major metabolic dysfunction. And it's there if you already have type 2 diabetes, something like that, you have leptin resistance.
For sure.
Yeah. If you have insulin resistance, you do have leptin resistance. So I think it's a really crucial marker for people and something to look at in the framework of everything from fertility to thyroid to autoimmune conditions.
Yeah.
It's just indicated in so many things, but they've studied it so much because they've tried to see how they can manipulate it. Can we inject it into people? Can we find a drug? Can we do, and they haven't been able to.
Like, we really need to do this naturally.
Right.
Like, naturally.
They haven't been able to manipulate it. And so a lot of people have kind of written it off as some sort of a marker that they should pay attention to.
And saying like, oh, it doesn't matter. But
Right.
it really does.
Yeah.
So if your leptin is too high, so if your
Yes.
leptin is above 10, you
Yeah.
have leptin resistance.
Likely, yes.
And I know you have a wonderful 21-day leptin reset
Yes.
that people can go through. But starting with this light
Yes.
piece would be really amazing.
Yeah.
And then what if it's too low? What if it's
Yes.
below 7? Like the last time I had mine tested, I think it was 2.3.
Yeah. And
Which is tricky because I'm not somebody who's like under,
No.
you know, like a more,
Yep.
it would be more common
Yep.
for a low leptin person to be underweight.
Yep.
And that's not something I experienced.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not at
I
this
was
time.
30 pounds heavier with low leptin than I am
Wow.
now, 30
Okay.
pounds heavier than I am now. Because I had a lot of stress. I mean, a special needs daughter. I see it with a lot of women who kind of run their engines a little high.
Yeah.
You know, a history of some women. It's a history of yo-yo dieting in general, fasting, too much fasting, because fasting is like super trendy. That's how I wrecked mine, because I was doing carnivore and fasting.
I think that's how I wrecked mine, was from doing keto and fasting.
Yep, carnivore fasting.
And I know. And the more and more I'm reading, I'm like, damn, that was so effective. And then it wasn't.
And then it wasn't. I always say, like,
Shoot.
it works.
And then
until
it
it
really
doesn't,
didn't.
Until it bites you in the ass. Like,
Yeah.
it does. Yeah, that's what happens. And the women are, because of my place, I used to be kind of in the carnivore community. Still know a lot of lovely people that do that whole thing. But I separated out from it after I realized that that was not going to be the ticket for fertility and long-term health, that it was more of just a dietary method that should be done strategically short-term for health conditions.
Yeah.
And then you cycle out of it.
Got it.
Because what happens when you put yourself in these long-term states of ketosis, your body is going to downregulate several things. Leptin goes down, thyroid goes down, and then you're like, how do I have 30 extra pounds? And I've been
With low leptin.
Right.
Yeah.
Because your body has said, we are in trouble.
Right.
And your body's always trying to protect you, right? Your body's always got your back, but like when you are constantly telling it you're starving, it's going to say, okay, well, then we better slow the heck down.
Right.
Because food's
We have
not
to
coming
conserve.
in and we're fasting all the time. So we're just going to bring things down.
And then what about deuterium?
Yes.
I mean, I know you could literally teach like, classes upon classes.
Yes.
So like the Cliff's Notes of deuterium. I've never heard of it before. You said it before.
I had never either. Dr. Laszlo Boros is the kind of father of deuterium. He's probably got over 1,000 different studies on it now. I've had him on my show before, but essentially it's a mitochondrial toxin when it accumulates. So it's neither good nor bad. It's essentially a heavy form of hydrogen, right? So there's 3 forms of hydrogen. There's like the quote unquote good hydrogen, there's protium, and then there's deuterium. Protium we're never really gonna encounter in daily life, but deuterium is something that we will encounter. And it is contained in food, it is contained in supplements, and it's essentially what it does again is it gets into the mitochondria if you've got too much of it and your body's not depleting enough of it. And it slows down the nanomotors, essentially. So it breaks the ATPase. So it stops the body from making energy and water, causes cellular chaos. Dr. Gabor Sommelier is the other deuterium doctor. He's written books on deuterium and cancer and has a ton of cancer protocols.
Okay.
So I will have people that have a history of cancer. I'll say, I'm going to give you this information. I don't prescribe things, not medical advice, but I typically will give someone who has a history of cancer or is dealing with cancer this to look into more, right? Because our bodies are supposed to be able to deplete deuterium naturally. How do we do that? Strong UV light, sweat, movement, building up of exclusion zone water, which is a whole other lovely thing I love to talk about.
Noting that, yeah.
But we're not in the sun. Yeah. A lot of people are not sweating. A lot of people are not moving. And so people are accumulating way too much deuterium in the body. And when you're eating out of season foods, that's a huge one, right? So if you're living in, Canada and you're eating tropical fruit smoothies in the middle of January, you're having very high deuterium food And then you have no strong UV
To
to
clear it
help
out.
your body deplete that. And so that can accumulate in the mitochondria as well. So yeah,
So it just
deuterium
like
is
slows down energy production and metabolism.
Exactly. It
Interesting.
stops water production in the body.
Okay, so then you end up dehydrated also.
Yes.
And listen, the show's called Plenty. So for you listening, I just want you to really be thinking about like, are you experiencing low energy? And we really want to tap into energy reserves and be able to access that energy for creativity and for,
Yes.
running our lives and our time, our ability to feel like we have more than enough time is deeply intertwined with our ability to have energy.
Yes.
Because if we don't have energy, it doesn't matter how much time we actually
Right.
have. It will feel like there's never enough time if you don't have your energy.
Exactly.
So this piece around mitochondrial function, metabolic function is critical. Now, one of the things you told me in our session is that our bellies are actually one of the places that we need the UV.
Yes.
And if you are like me, someone listening, I kind of stopped wearing two pieces like a long time ago. I've gone back since talking to you, which has been fun, but not because I particularly like have a desire to wear a bikini, but because of what you told me about the light and the belly.
Yes.
Will you talk about that?
Yeah. So our gut microbiome, our thyroid, all of these different things shift seasonally in response to UV. There are some really interesting studies showing how light impacts gut microbiome diversity. And so a lot of times people have gut issues. And number one, their circadian rhythms are crap. So that is going to be a huge issue. Your gut lining can't repair. You're not getting the right signaling from the light. You're not getting enough darkness. But also people are not exposing their bellies to any sort of light.
Yeah.
And that's a huge issue for your gut microbiome because
So interesting. And it makes so much sense. As soon as you told me, I was like, oh, yeah. And I was talking to a girlfriend. I'm curious about this. So I was talking to a girlfriend. She's struggling with depression right now. She has throughout her life, but it's like,
it's got it right
it's
now.
up right now. And I was like, intuitively, I suggested that she start getting some sunlight on her belly. Was that intuition correct?
Yeah.
How does light impact our mental health?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at circadian disruption and depression. Like I've just figured out how to like look stuff up on PubMed. It's super easy, right?
I love PubMed.
So circadian disruption and depression, lack of sunlight and depression, like and mental health disorders. I mean, they're rampant, huge, huge, huge. And I'm somebody who was on, I started going on ADHD medication when I was 14, SSRIs when I was in high school because I was in the 90s and like we put everybody on Prozac instead of dealing with anything. It was like, here, you just need some Prozac
Instead
and
of
some
opening
Adderall.
a window.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say, listen, there's a time and a place, but yes.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of continued that. And it wasn't until I brought these things. Carnivore diet helped tremendously because I think the sugar does play, and the food plays a huge role in how your brain and body, all of that functions. Absolutely. But the light piece was like, whoa, it's like game changer because we make serotonin and dopamine, of course, in UVA light, which we get in that morning time. We've got UVA all day long, right? UVB is the vitamin D that everyone's obsessed with, which is helpful. It's good. But you don't have to get UVB to get benefits from sun.
Yes.
Right? So UVA and then also Lux, like we were kind of talking about.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about Lux. I don't know what that is.
So you've probably heard about 10,000 Lux light boxes.
Yes.
I don't like those for various reasons. I mean, just because it's, like I said, with the phone, you're telling your body it's the middle of the day. It's a disrupting signal. There's no red, infrared to balance it. Like it's not how we would receive that in nature. I know some people that really swear by their light boxes, but here's the thing. When you look at the science on Lux, for depression and anxiety, you only need about 1,000 to 2,000 Lux per hour for little bits of time in order to stave off that anxiety, depression, when you're looking at it from that standpoint. So indoors, it's nice and bright here, but if I had a Lux meter, the max it probably would be about 500 maybe, between 300 and 500.
Because we're under artificial LED light.
Right.
Yeah.
If you go outside, on a cloudy, rainy day, it's anywhere from 3 to 10,000 lux.
Wow.
Even when it's raining, right? Even when it's cloudy. That's why in my my circadian app, I'm going to have a little lux meter because I want people to actually see it, because you're like, I'm in the Target store right now. It's so awful and bright in here, and it's like 300 lux. Then you go outside, it's overcast and it's like gloomy, but it's still.
But you're getting all that positive,
Right.
like natural light.
And same thing with weight loss. There are, I think it's around 2,000 to 3,000 lux that you need in order to activate certain metabolic processes in your brain for weight loss. And so that can also be something that's like, quote unquote, slowing down your metabolism. You're not in a bright enough environment. And so.
Yeah, and turning on the lights brighter inside your house is not going to cut it.
No.
Ever.
No. It's not.
Right.
It's not.
This is so fascinating. So when we think about our daily lives, many people are just on a screen, a computer screen, a phone screen, literally from the moment they wake up until the moment they go to bed. And they are doing that indoors with windows and doors closed. And then we wonder why we have a problem with our metabolism. We're low energy. We're depressed. We're anxious. We're lonely. It's literally like we're disconnected from the light. I mean, we are animals.
We're light beings.
Right. We
all
are
of
light
us.
beings. Our entire nervous system, our brain and our bodies communicate through light, energy. Electricity.
Our mitochondria make light. Like we have UV receptors on cytochrome 1, which is where carbohydrates enter the electron transport chain. And so, if you're going to be eating a lot of carbs, you should be under a lot of strong UV light. I mean, it's
Eat your carbs outside.
Outside in the sunlight under strong UV.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you told me something that has actually really been a game changer, which is that you don't have to, because I can get very like all or nothing, which I think is common. And I'm like, well, I live in an apartment. I work in an apartment. I live in a city. I don't have my own yard. And these are things I will be shifting over time, but this is our moment in our life.
And a lot of people, I'm
right?
sure,
And
that
so
are
I'm
in your
like,
community
okay,
are
well,
the same.
I'm not, I don't actually have my own grass to like take off my shoes and be barefoot. Like all the grass in my area has like dog pee on it or like trash. So anyway, we're not talking about grounding right now, but you said you were like, any amount is good. So I've actually been, we're here on my podcast set, which is in our work apartment. I've actually been working with the slider open here if I work out, I'm working out with the slider open. My slider's open like all the time at our apartment. And my husband's like, you're really screwing with the AC. And I'm like,
my husband
except that I am repatterning all of
everyone's circadian rhythm.
So like, it's fine.
Deal with it.
Or, we have a little bit of a bug problem, but anyway.
Bug zappers.
Yeah. I need to get a bug zapper. Thank you.
I have 2 big ones. It freaks me out.
Just inside you have bug zappers.
They have indoor UV bug zappers, and they don't disrupt your circadian rhythm at all.
Okay.
And I have one in my kitchen, and I'll just be sitting in there working, and I hear like, I'm like,
because you said like even having a sliver of daytime light, if you're on a screen, will mitigate those effects.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, because light travels and it bends, right? And we only need a little signal for our brain to actually know what's going on. And if you are going to be on the screen, I love using something like Iris software. That's really, really helpful. Or if you can't open a window, because I have people who are like, I'm locked in the office, I can't. Iris software or yellow blue blockers, and then just making a conscious effort to get up and take a break and peek your head out a window. Just open it up and be like, okay, it's 2:00. All right. And go back inside.
Right. So you're like, or you're essentially signaling to your body where you are in time and space.
Always.
By connecting with what's happening outside.
Yeah. And if you're able to ground, you do that with your feet touching the earth as well, right? Because
bare
you
feet.
get the temperature of the earth, you get the time of day, you get those electrons, and your body, again, it's like another form of like orienting to time of day, time of year, because it's different, in the middle of summer versus the middle of winter, what you're going to get during those times.
Does that work on like a sidewalk or a driveway?
Yeah.
But it doesn't work if there's rubber involved.
Asphalt, rubber, but concrete, yeah. And a lot of people that live in high rises, they'll buy a conductivity meter and test it, and they're grounded on a concrete balcony.
Oh, really?
I have a lot of people
I
who've
also
done that.
did buy some grounding shoes.
Yeah, I love my. I have,
they make me look like a hobbit, but
which ones did you buy? They have some cute ones.
they do. They're still hobbit-esque, but in like a cuter way. So I don't wear them a ton, but when I do, I really notice the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your thought on grounding sheets? Because I get this question.
I don't like them. Just, Dr. Laura Conover, and her website is Intuition Physician. Her products are the only ones that I think are good.
Yeah.
Because she's got some shielding, like dirty electricity filters. Because a lot of times our bodies run on a DC electric current.
Yes.
Right? When you're plugging something into a wall, you're pulling in AC electric, right? So the earth is DC, we are DC.
So just for folks listening, DC is direct current,
Yep.
AC is alternating current. So it's two different kinds of electricity.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, when you look at some of the studies, because I had Dr. Conover on my show, she told me about a few studies. There was a study with babies in the NICU, and half the babies they put them on grounding mats that were plugged in.
Okay.
And then the other half in the NICU were not. And the babies that were on the grounding mats that were plugged in, even using the AC current, had
better.
profoundly better than the ones that didn't.
That's so amazing. So it could be one of those things like maybe it's not optimal, but maybe it's better than nothing.
Yes. And I just don't like the sheets though, because I have had
plugged into electricity in your bed.
Well,
that seems
and
like a bad
some people,
idea.
Even my good friend Dr. Sarah Pugh, she just stayed at my house for like 2 months, and she like slept in my yard in a tent. Like my husband's just like, "What? You have the weirdest friends." Like
Accurate.
he keeps finding like pine cones around the house because she like wrapped them in copper to like do different energetic things.
Totally.
He's like, "I found this paper in the closet that has like this weird writing on it. Should I throw it away?" I'm like, "No, just leave it. Like she left it for us. Like it's like a blessing of some sort, but don't touch it."
Amazing.
He's like, "Okay."
Okay, bye.
It's fine. My wife again. But she actually got a grounding rod, stuck it in the ground,
Okay.
and ran it into the house with a wire, 2 sheets on the bed in the downstairs where she was staying. So she slept terrible, just terrible, like horrible, horrible sleep. And she actually had to like go sleep in the yard to recover from it because
Interesting.
and we live in we live in the middle of a city, busy road, like power lines, all the things.
Yeah.
And so I think there was probably some power it's kind of like an antenna that you're
Yes,
pulling
she may
it in.
have like tapped into that
Yeah.
when she stuck the thing in
Yeah.
the yard. Yeah.
But I've just had too many clients and too many people that buy the sheets and they sleep worse.
Okay. So it's like just try to get your
Just like-
socks and shoes off.
Yeah.
And
just go
stand on the
outside.
ground.
And it's cumulative. So like if you can just get 45 minutes total over a day, that's great. And then Dr. Conover, who is like the grounding queen, she lives in an environment where she can barely ground at all. And so she just goes camping once a month.
And stores it all up. It works like that?
Yep.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. So she just goes off grid 2 days a month camping.
Cool.
And gathers her
Just
electrons.
takes it with her for the rest of the month.
Yeah.
That's very lovely. What do you think about EMFs?
So there are some issues with them because they dehydrate us on a cellular level, right?
Okay.
Dr. Gerald Pollack is like the father of structured water, exclusion
Yes.
zone water, has
Yes.
done a lot of the work on it. And he essentially showed in his laboratory that when exclusion zone water, which surrounds about 99% of the cells in our body, it is also in the inside of the mitochondria, surrounding each of those respiratory proteins. So our body is full of this exclusion zone water. It's essentially a battery that gives us energy, right? Wow. When he exposed exclusion zone water to Wi-Fi, it took it down by 15 to 20%. So my biggest issue with the EMF is how it dehydrates us on a cellular level. And you can pretty much draw most health issues to some sort of dehydration.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. And so that's my biggest issue with it. Now I am playing around with some harmonizing because I don't think that we can in this lifetime just get away from it. Even if you move out somewhere, they could just put a satellite and
Yeah,
it's like,
100%, 100%. And what is exclusion zone water?
yeah. So
I mean,
it
you
is
sort of described it, but
it's basically has a negative charge, right? So all of our cells have this, well, healthy cells, and this is very well documented as well. Healthy cells all have a negative charge, and it is from that exclusion zone water that surrounds the cells.
Okay.
And that is what gives them their viscosity. If you've ever seen that really popular grounding illustration of all the red blood cells kind of like clumped together, and then it shows someone stepping onto the earth and grounding, it shows all the red blood cells unclumping,
Wow.
moving again. Yeah. So that's essentially what's happening when we're around a lot of Wi-Fi and non-native EMF is we're losing viscosity of the blood, we're losing flow. I mean, the more I study exclusion zone water, I'm like, that's it. Like,
Wow.
that is why everyone is dehydrated on this cellular level, because again, it surrounds pretty much every single cell in your body, 99%. And then it's lined on the inner and outer mitochondrial membrane. And each of those 5 respiratory proteins is also surrounded by it. So for the mitochondria to make ATP and water, which I think is our primary energy source, that happens at step 4, we have to have adequate exclusion zone water. Or what happens? Those electrons moving across the electron transport chain get lost. We've got ROS, we have cell death, we have low voltage.
What does ROS mean?
Reactive oxygen species is just basically like inflammation.
Okay.
Right? So electrons that get lost in that electron transport chain.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is exclusionary water
Exclusion zone. Yeah.
Like, what? Is exclusion zone water something we should be making at our houses, or is it something that happens inside our body?
Both.
And also, what kind of water do you drink?
Both.
Okay.
Sorry. When I talk about it, the first thing is like, what do I drink?
Yeah.
What should I drink? And I'm like, yes.
It sounds like there's a lot of other things.
We want to, and I'll talk about that, but I want to really bring it home that it's important that we support our bodies in a way that they're able to hold on to water.
Yes.
And make it.
Yes.
And that involves circadian signaling, light, infrared in particular, expands that exclusion zone fourfold.
0 to 10 degrees in the morning.
Yep. Sunrise, UVA, that's really, circadian signaling is crucial.
Great.
But yeah, infrared, like I just mentioned, that we've taken out of all of our homes. Dr. Pollack again showed that exposure to infrared expands the exclusion zone water up to 4-fold.
Wow.
So,
wow.
And we get that all day. Like that's all day from before sunrise to after sunset.
It's available all day if you are getting light from the outside.
Go out, right. All you gotta do is go outside, right? And so
just go outside.
we gotta do these things to support
Yeah.
exclusion zone water in the body.
Yes.
Grounding, sunlight, infrared on the skin. It's not being freaked out. And there's a spiritual element to all of this as well.
We were going to go there in a minute.
Definitely.
Yep.
There's definitely a big spiritual element to all of it. Talk about that all day in regards to water. But so that's primary is like, because I'll get people and they're like, I'm buying all the water and I'm doing all the things. And I'm like, honey, you can't hang on. You're not holding on to it.
Right. It doesn't matter what you're pouring in because
you're freaking out and you're around like a ton of electronics and your blue light stops water production. So it blocks cytochrome 4, literally shuts it down. So that's the other big issue with the blue light. And so if someone's in these environments, they're just constantly losing, right? Yeah. But I do drink. So the 4 things that I do to my water, number 1 is always clean. So I have a distiller now. I also have a spring aqua system that's under sink that does structuring and mineralizing, but we've been getting into hydrogen, so that's why we got the distiller. Yes. And so we clean the water, and then we usually add some sort of minerals back to it. I love Quinton hypertonic. That's my favorite. Then I'll do sometimes hydrogen or structuring. Now, I just you can structure with your intention.
Yes.
Right? Like Veda Austin was on my show. She did like a 2-hour like illustration. I mean, just beautiful,
so
showing
cool.
you how intention structures water. And she's been able to replicate this all over the world.
Yeah, so you can just bless your own water.
Right.
How beautiful.
You don't necessarily need to buy expensive devices.
Yeah.
Just hold it next to your heart and like,
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Of course.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, with the electromagnetic field of our heart, it would absolutely, if you're in coherence, the water's going to go into coherence with you.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Cool.
So, I mean, clean it, put some minerals in, pray.
Yeah.
And then if you want to play around with hydrogen,
Yes.
that's a fun one to explore.
Yes, we have that at our house, but I'm not using it. So can you remind me? Can you remind me? I have like so many things. Can you remind me why I would be doing that? I literally listened to like a 3-hour podcast about it, and then it was after Mike's. It was, you know what it was? I remember now. It's all coming back to me. It was after Mike's. He had this accident where he got hit by a car. And so this is my segue into then the spiritual emotional, because this is a perfect example of like, I took in this information, and I even remember the underpass where I was listening to this podcast, but I have zero recollection of the benefits because I was so stressed out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But let's talk about hydrogen. Then we're going to talk about emotions and spiritual.
Yeah. So it's basically a selective antioxidant.
Okay.
And there's a lot of really, really fascinating research on hydrogen showing it in cancer, in metabolic diseases, in autoimmune conditions, and the healing benefits. Now, we do inhalation. The reason why we got into hydrogen was my daughter started having, of course, after we had the baby, she started having some really serious health issues, and we're still dealing with a lot of that. But we were at the point where we were going to have to literally send her away to a psychiatric institution because she was getting so violent and aggressive and having these like psychotic episodes. And it was terrifying. And so I connected with a guy, his name's Greg, the Hydrogen Man.
I think he was on the podcast.
Yeah. Greg he's just such a really wonderful person. Like he really doesn't make a lot of money or money at all really from what he does. He just helps people. Like he talked to me for 2 hours on the phone back in December and was like, you got to try this for her.
So she's been breathing it through the, what is that thing called?
The cannula.
Cannula. Yeah. So I have that, and I was doing it overnight. I was breathing it in overnight, but it's funny with my sleep. So what do you find is like the minimum effective dose? Of course, everyone's going to be so different, and your daughter's clearly going to be different, but like what's recommended for the amount of time during the day?
Anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes a day is good.
Okay.
You know,
well, I'll just bring it to the office and start doing it while I work.
It's so easy to do while you work. Like for her, we just do it when she comes home from school, or like this morning I got up at 4 to be here, and she got up at 4 also. So
naturally. Now's a good time to breathe some hydrogen.
Yeah, I did. I'm like, just put her on the machine.
And will she do it?
Yeah.
She'll sit? Okay.
She will.
Yeah.
It's very, very calming for her.
Yeah.
Like I was shocked that she would do it.
But see, to me, that's such a sign because the body is like for my girls have really struggled with some severe eczema, my oldest daughter in particular. And one of the things we've done is the ionic foot baths. And it's been really interesting to notice how much she asks for it, which to me is an indicator that her body loves that. And it's good
Kids
for her.
Kids are so intuitive.
Yeah.
And my daughter, like, some days she'll come home from school and she'll do 30 minutes and then she's like throwing it off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Cool. So that must be the amount her body needed.
That's fine.
Yeah. No, that's great.
So kids are into it. Like my son, we were using red light in his ear last night because he went swimming and he doesn't know you're not supposed to just like dive under the water the whole time. So he had all this water. And so we just put the red little torch in his ear.
Oh.
And he was like,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Love that.
Yeah.
We've been talking about very like practical 3D things that are not common, but they are things that you do externally.
Yes.
Or, scientifically.
Process.
Right. Yeah. It's like this ingredient, that thing, I'm doing this with the light, with the da-da-da.
Yes.
What about all of the energetic factors that are caused by our thoughts, our beliefs, our nervous system wiring, our connection to God, our connection to spirit. How do you see those things playing in, and where do you guide your clients around that? Because, the data around like spontaneous remission, healing that, in people who are like chain smokers and drinking whiskey every day, like, it's like some of this stuff, it doesn't make sense scientifically, but the other factor is the emotional, spiritual piece.
And that's more like quantum.
Yes.
I see it as like the true quantum is like something can happen in your body so quickly, right? Like my partner Carrie and I have a fertility course. We've had so many women go through there. We just got 2 emails last week of women who are about to give birth. And they were told, you're never getting pregnant. Like you're just, that's it. They've been through like some of them 10 rounds of IVF, multiple loss. I mean, just horrible like stories that will just make you cry. And the first thing that we did with the ladies was we changed our course. The first time we ran it, it was all process, right? The second time we ran it, we were like, okay, that was really good, but we need to do what we did on week 6 and week 1 and really talk to them about how they are perceiving this whole thing.
Totally.
And because when you look at water, again, you can look at Masaru Emoto's work, which has been people
incredible.
Can you PubMed? Yes, you actually can.
Yes, you can.
It is. You do. Okay. So we can get that out of the way.
The book is Messages in Water, in case you're curious to learn more.
And they have replicated his work, and it is in PubMed if you want to go search it, But when you actually understand the volume of water in our body and what it is doing as this energy battery, right? And doing all these things in the body, you look at health completely different.
Yes.
And if you're sitting there, that's where I had to get to in my fertility journey. Like I was in process. I was cold plunging 3 times a week. I was outside every morning, blocking blue light, doing all the things. And it was when I started sitting in bed at night, imagining holding my son, because I knew I had a session with a medium in 2016, and a little boy showed up. And I was like, I'm not having any more kids. She's like, well, there's a little boy here for you. And I was like, okay. She's like, he's jumping up and down. He says he's healthy. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, but I'm not having any more kids. And then she's like, well, he just got onto your side and he is like with you. And he's like, I will just like stay with you. If you want to bring me here, just know that I'm going to be healthy and you don't have to worry about that part. But I'm just going to stay with you. So if you want to bring me here, cool. If not, I'll be with you. And I just never could get that out of my head. And so all the time I was going through all this fertility stuff, I kept remembering this little boy. And it wasn't until I actually started sitting in bed at night after my meditation, and I would just pretend to like cradle a little baby boy and just feel myself holding him and all the emotions of having this little boy, and then pregnant, and then when I found out it was a boy, I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. Like, this is like, all of it's real,
real.
So that you can't process, that you can't have a strategy for that spiritual element. And if you want to live by your diagnosis, which I get people a lot, I have this, I have mold, I have parasites, I have this, I have that. I'm like, whew, honey. Yes. But you know what? Like, you are making this your person and you're carrying this with you. And that is not your body. As long as you're hearing those messages, that water inside of your body is listening to it. And so, there is that piece that we had to do with our ladies of really getting them out of like, I'm infertile. Like I'm this. You have to let go of that.
We have to really do the identity work.
Yes.
Yeah. Because on a quantum level, our frequency, the note that our insides are playing is going to be the note that our outside is experiencing as well. Yeah.
And there's you do an amazing job talking about this with manifesting things in your life and your business and just like, but our health is the same.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But people are like, let's do the money. And
it's so interesting the other day because, when you begin to learn to regulate your nervous system and
Yes.
signal safety to your body, there are so many positive health outcomes,
Yes,
obviously.
100%.
And, I know of all this data. It's not what I teach about, but I did ask the other day in
Yeah.
our Relaxed Money community, and so many people are having shifts physically with
Amazing.
various symptoms and various issues that they have. And they signed up for a money course. But the great news is, like, when you work on your energetics,
Yes,
everything
everything shifts.
improves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. I could talk to you for hours. This is amazing. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
your depth of knowledge and for bringing information to people that is not common, but is very effective.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for even the small amount that I've implemented. I've had incredible results. I feel so much better, just the shifts in with the light specifically, but also the way I'm really thinking about metabolism and
Yes.
and thinking about myself as a light being and how that's
Yes.
connected to my ability to produce energy and to turn food and light into energy in my body. So the applications for it are so wide and vast in terms of our ability to show up in our lives and infuse our work and our relationships and our families with that light as well. So thank you for being like a bringer of the light and being here today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic. And to me, it's just like such a great way of looking at health, because the functional medicine stuff also didn't work. And I think that's where a lot of people go, is like, all right, allopathic didn't work. Let me go to functional and start all these supplement protocols and start all these diets and stuff. And then they're just kind of spinning out. And I'm like, we need to kind of go even higher level.
Even higher level.
Yeah.
Like what are we really? Who are we really? We are light beings.
We think
Let's
that we're
work with
these
that.
like biochemical, put something in and get something out. And the body just doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
does not.
it's too reductionist.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so where can people go if they want to learn more about your work, your app, your courses, your podcast, all of that?
Yeah, so it's www.sarahkleinerwellness.com is my main website. I've got a ton of free resources that'll tell you how
Your
to...
generosity with your free resources is insane.
Oh, thank you.
I would just like to say, when I download like those free guides you create, I'm like, I cannot believe I didn't pay for this. Unbelievable. Okay, so I just have to say that.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got all kinds of free guides. Like,
Amazing.
I love doing free stuff. It's energetics, right? Like, and the people that are ready to invest and put that energy into more investment. We've got courses.
Yes.
Doing an app called the My Circadian app, which will be like a little hub where you can tell what the lux is in the room that you're in, and what time is sunrise, what time is UVA, what time is UVB,
Awesome.
how much vitamin D am I making right now, or can I make it? And we're even going to put a little moon tracker. We've got yes. I'm like, we have to have a moon tracker.
Thank you.
In there. It's very important.
It's your complete solar and lunar access point.
Yes, we're going to know what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here. Thanks for listening to this episode of Plenty. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review. That's one of the best ways that you can ensure to spread the abundance of plenty with others. You can even text it to a friend and tell them to listen in. And if you want even more support to expand your abundance, head over to katenorthrup.com/breakthroughs, where you can grab my free money breakthrough guide that details the biggest money breakthroughs from some of the top earning women I know, plus a mini lesson accompanying it with my own biggest money breakthroughs and a nervous system healing tool for you to expand your abundance. Again, that's over at katenorthrup.com/breakthroughs. See you next time.